Welcome to the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders at B2B services, tech, and SaaS companies to learn the systems and processes they've used to create success for their business. We'll also learn from marketing and sales experts to provide insights to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and the podcast is brought to you by Modern Revenue Strategies and their 10x ROI B2B Growth Guarantee. Schedule a free diagnostic call to learn the fastest path to double your B2B revenues in just 90 days. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Osborne. Today, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Mark Wasiljew. Now, I'm going to read Mark's bio to make sure I get this right. He has almost 20 years of experience building strategic partnerships at large organizations like Shopify and Fandango and numerous startups. He has built and grown multi-year relationships with the largest companies across tech, media, commerce, and more. He currently operates as a fractional head of partnerships, helping startups determine the best methods to bring their capabilities to larger partners with clients across varied spaces like streaming, AI, fintech, e-commerce, home exercise, and ad tech. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to this conversation, and I'm glad you're able to join us today. But before we dive into some of the topics we've got planned, why don't you kind of tell your story a little bit? Let our audience know a little bit how you kind of got into this and what your path has looked like and really what you do today.
Yeah, sure thing. So relatively briefly, I've been interested in technology since I was in high school, growing up in a little town in Wisconsin, and always wanted to figure out how to work in tech. And when I got to business school, I specifically came to California for B school because I wanted to get into the tech scene. Was fortunate enough to intern at a venture capital fund during that summer. And then when I was about to graduate, I was interning at a startup, and I was just doing sales decks and whatever random things they need an intern for. And our head of sales said, "Hey, you're graduating. Our BD team needs some help. I think you'd be a fit there. Why don't you go check that out?" And so I talked to that head of BD, and I've been doing it ever since. And so kudos to Doug Neiman, who saw some potential in me that I didn't know was there. But it turned out it was a great fit for how I think and what I like to do. Heavy focus on connecting dots across disparate places, figuring out how to put puzzle pieces together to make deals work, building relationships and figuring out how to grow those relationships has been a great fit for me. So over the next 20 years across media and tech companies, as you noted, I've been doing different versions of business development and partnerships, always with an eye on how do you grow this organization without just doing sales, right? There's plenty of folks that do sales. There's lots of expertise there. What are the other ways that you can grow this organization? What are the other levers that you can pull that will help bring growth to this organization? We can talk about that in more detail. So did that in the corporate side and startup side in between. And like a couple years ago, I said, okay, I want to do this on my own. I don't want to worry about which 20 people to email every time I have a question. I just want to get some good work done, help my clients see real growth and real impact. And so that's what I've been doing for a couple of years now.
Awesome. So you hit on something that I want to unpack for our audience. And you and I have talked about this, this term of BD or business development and partnerships, but in sales. And, for many years, business development meant sort of what you really do, which is go out and develop these business partnerships, like deep integrations. And then it got sort of co-opted by sales. Tell us really what is the sort of art and science, the discipline of partnership development, business development, where you spend your time. What does that really mean?
Yeah. I think at its core, it's identifying opportunities to grow the business, right? Which is an overly simplistic way to put it, but it encompasses a lot of subcategories, right? So that could be, how do we build B2B relationships that will help us from a marketing lens, from a build a better product lens, from a drive more sales leads lens? bring new revenue in, whether that's leveraging existing assets to you know, sell those in the marketplace or to sell additional products to our existing customer base, right? That are complementary to what we're already doing, right? All those sort of different flavors are options on the menu of things you're going to want to explore depending on what's important to the company. And then when you do it right, you find the right partners that do some or even all of the above. So they're not just a sales channel partner, but you also have a product integration. So the sales channel relationship feels a lot more native and natural to your potential clients. And by the way, you're also cross-selling their product to your customer base. So there's a much deeper integration, a much more complex relationship. And it doesn't always start there, but over time, that's the goal. You want to grow into those levels of relationship. So both sides, and ultimately, you want a win-win-win relationship. It's great for you, it's great for the partner, but at the end of the day, it also has to be great for the customer too.
That's right. That's right. And I love that explanation because, and I always think of it as things that have really heavy leverage. So, building this one relationship, it might take months or even a year to do, but then it brings with it all of these, benefits that are beyond just even closing a very large client, which, just sort of has that one opportunity. This opens the door for not only many more opportunities, but the opportunity to enhance the product as well as the market position, all those things that you hit on, which is great. So thinking about it from that lens, partnership development takes time. As I just sort of alluded to, your largest client, it might take you 6 months to a year to close. A partnership might take even more time than that. And so for early stage companies that are, thinking about, I gotta get revenues in and I gotta grow, what is the motivation for them to devote the resources to building these partnerships beyond just focusing on bringing in clients?
Yeah. Especially for early stage companies, they reach a stage where they're ready to make a bet that getting one client at a time is still good, but with the right partnership, you can get 100 clients at a time, 500 clients at a time, 1,000 clients at a time, right? It's an eye on, there is a lot of scale out there, and we know it's going to take time to unlock it, but we have confidence that we have the right team in place, that we have the right product, that it's worth investing in those relationships to get to that point where we can unlock that level of scale through that relationship. That's often where it starts. But again, it depends on the flavor, right? Sometimes it's chasing sales channels and just chasing more leads and revenue at scale, which is great. We can totally do that. Sometimes it's the reverse. Sometimes it's, okay, we've got a good customer base. How can we bring partners in that complement what we're already doing, right? That's a little bit of an easier path to go down. It's got a different orientation, right? It's making more money off your current customers versus adding new customers, right? And so it's just a matter of what's the priority, what's the opportunity. But again, you want to flip it to be all of the above, right? So it's bring in a partner that can sell a complementary service and you take a chunk of that revenue. Hopefully that partner can also sell your service, right?
Right.
And that's going to be worth investing. And then if you're going to do that, what do the product integrations look like? What are the APIs you need to make available to each other? How does your product show up in their ecosystem and vice versa? So you build a more holistic customer experience through this partnership.
So let's play a little bit of devil's avocado here.
Sure.
Which is like, that all sounds great. Like, why wouldn't I do that? What are some of the sort of pitfalls or challenges that companies run into on this path?
I think there's a couple of things. So the first one, and the sort of the most immediate one that always pops up is, yeah, that's a great idea. Why does the partner want to do that with you? Right? Because they're not a customer, right? You're not selling them on your value proposition the same way you sell it to your customer. You need to figure out what your value proposition is to the partner. How are you solving a problem that is a priority for that partner? And how do you lean into that solution? So that's the biggest piece. And then a lot of it is just understanding that these things take time because you're coordinating between two different organizations, lots of different decision makers across both organizations. People go on vacation, people have other issues pop up. And so, meetings get delayed and postponed. Negotiating deals takes time. And so these things, and sometimes they'll fall apart 3 months in, 6 months in, priorities change, executives move, right? It's not it's not that different from an enterprise sales motion, right? Having to really learn the organization, learn who matters, learn who makes decisions, what they care about, and then seeing it through to the finish line. It's also an understanding that you're not going to get it right out of the gate. So yes, there's this pie in the sky world of we sell your product, you sell our product, we're fully integrated. You're going to start with one piece of that, and just getting the first piece is going to take a while. And so a lot of it is just having the patience to get there as well. But honestly, the biggest thing is finding the partner who cares enough to want to invest the same amount of time as you are in building out this relationship from the start. And that's a big hurdle to get over. And so you may say, oh, look, there's a dozen companies we could do this with, and 11 of them, this won't be a priority for any number of reasons. And so you got to find the right one who's ready and willing to invest that also fits what your product does.
Well, and that's a real strategic lens and a strategic sort of problem solving thing that requires a lot of thought work. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why some companies don't do it is they're too busy moving fast, and they don't have the time to kind of, take that step back and open the aperture and really think about the long-term product roadmap that company's building towards aligns with our long-term product roadmap. And so there is a synergy there that may not be, immediately, apparent today, but is apparent if you read between the lines of what they say and what they're trying to do, versus just, well, let me rent someone's list and have an affiliate relationship, which is definitely not what you're talking about, right? Like these partnerships are very different from just sort of like an affiliate kind of reseller.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and the other thing I'll add is you're going to run into situations where, yeah, the partner would love to work with you, but what they want in return is not something you're necessarily going to want to give, right? And especially if you're talking about bigger tech companies, bigger media companies, like they're going to want everything in return. And the question is that worth it to you? And that's a big strategic decision. And as exciting as it would be to be in the door with a Facebook or a Warner Brothers or the NBA or whoever that is, right? It's a lot of times it's take it or leave it. And the right answer is going to be leave it in some cases. But you're going to put a lot of work in to get to the point of having to make that decision.
Wow. Well, and as I think about, so many of the overnight success stories in the startup world, it really is oftentimes those partnerships that served as the unlock, where a company, had an idea, developed a solution, built some client base, but then found the partnership where that partner already had access to a very large marketplace where they could plug them in, whether it was through a direct integration with their product solution or just as a preferred provider of, sort of an ancillary service. And that's what, really sort of explodes everything for those companies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well,
and in an ideal world, well, and not even the only way this works is if it explodes for both sides.
Yeah.
Right. Both partners need to see that growth. I mean, a couple examples come to mind. Shopify and Stripe came up together, and by integrating Stripe's payments into the back end of Shopify's e-commerce platform and making it super simple for the end customer, the merchant, to be able to launch their store and have payments built in, both companies took off. Right. And now they took off for reasons separate from that relationship, obviously, but that was a key driver of
That's right.
Having really aligned interests, having a core solution that worked for the customer, and both companies were able to dramatically benefit from that. Another example would be in my time at Fandango. We were one of the big unlocks for Fandango's growth was when Google changed their search functionality. So instead of just giving you a set of links that said, "Oh, here's Fandango, go see it," they actually pulled up all the show times right in your search results, and each of those show times clicked straight into a purchase funnel. And that was a massive unlock for Fandango, a huge value for them, because all of a sudden now we're skipping steps in the buying process. And as you know, in e-commerce, the more steps you can skip, the faster and the higher conversion rate you're going to get. Also benefited Google. All of a sudden now more folks were Googling for showtimes using that search bar, right? And so again, you want to figure out what that unlock is that enables both companies to deliver a win and see the tide lift from that.
So you've painted a very attractive picture
Yep.
of why it's worth doing sort of strategically. Talk to us a little bit about tactically how does a company go about doing this? Like, not only from the perspective of like, boy, it sure would be great if we could partner with so and so because we serve similar customers, but and have complementary services. But there's some tactical, sort of mechanisms there. How do companies do this?
Yeah. So there's a framework that I use with my clients,
Okay.
and I'll go through it very briefly. So step one is an internal assessment. It's really understanding what it is you're trying to solve for through these partnerships, right? You can't chase everything all at once. So what's most important to you? Is it bringing in a service provider that you can sell additional services to your customers? Is it building out sales channels? Is it marketing deals? Is it a product enhancement? Whatever that is that you're trying to solve for, be clear about that first, because that's going to impact the rest of the strategy. And know who your customer is, like, especially if you're going down the sales channel path. Why are they buying? When are they buying? Like, you need those details, because you may be in the fitness space and you think you want to partner with gyms and health clubs and personal trainers. But if it turns out all your customers are buying when they're remodeling their home because they're thinking about their fitness space, like,
Right.
that dramatically changes who you're going to partner with. Right. And so thinking through and really knowing your customer impacts that. So once you know what you're solving for, then you think about, well, what do I have to offer in return? Right. To the previous point, why do these partners want to work with you? Like, what are the assets that you have? Your brand, your data, your customers, your technology. Like, what are the things that you have to offer that can be a problem solver for a potential partner? Right. So that's that internal assessment. Next, we start to look at, okay, so then who's out there, right? For what we want, who's really good at it, right? We know who our ideal customer is really in really fine detail. Who's already aggregated that customer, right? That's on our list. Or who offers the service really well that we would want to offer to our customers, right? Or who has a clear overlap in customer base that we'd want to do a co-marketing arrangement with, right? All these sorts of questions, right? You make that list and you start to look at that list and figure out what they want, right? If they're public companies, you can go through their filings, their CEOs make all sorts of statements. You know what's a priority for them. So you start to match up, okay, do my assets match up? Can I solve their problem? Right?
Okay.
Um,
And a common example of that is, very large companies oftentimes need to build these partnerships as a way of maintaining the air of innovation, because they can't do the skunk works. They can't do some of the things that smaller companies can do. And so that's I expect a common path to partnership,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. And then now you've got your strategy. Now you got to start making phone calls, right? Like anything else. And again, similar to sales, you can have a plan. You got to talk to customers and validate the plan. So it's the same thing. You start talking to partners, you find out what they care about and whether what you do is going to be important to them. Because if not, you're just going to have a bunch of this is interesting conversations.
Right.
They're going to keep going and going and going and not go anywhere. You want, oh, this is amazing. This solves our problem. We would love to. How do we get started? What does this look like? Right. Those are the reactions you're looking for. Again, similar to sales, you're not trying to get somebody to write a check, right? You're trying to get them access to something that they own and be willing to start talking about what an exchange of assets looks like. That's what you're trying to get to. And you have to be flexible, right? So I had one client, they're an accounting firm at heart, but they build custom solutions for all of their clients. And in one case, they built a connector between an ERP and a billing platform that did not already exist. Makes sense, right? They said, hey, there's 500 customers that use both of those services. They're all doing double entry. If we could work with that ERP, plug
Right.
500 customers in, we're off to the races. So we get on the phone with the CEO. We've got some hypotheses. And he says, yeah, we could see how this could help us grow our customer base a little bit. It certainly would help with churn. But even if we could bring in a bunch of new customers, we're not ready to onboard. We don't have the capabilities to onboard at scale right now. We were an accounting firm. We can do onboarding. We can help you with that, right? And so all of a sudden, the conversation you thought you were having changes. You still have that vision of doing the data connector in the future, but in the short term, we can get new customers from you, help them onboard onto your platform, and then, by the way, in the process, get them on this connector and make this whole thing work better, right? And so it's a slow build to get to the point, but now you're doing onboarding. Now you're building a relationship with their marketing department. They're starting to put you into more of their materials as a service provider, right? And things start to build. And then you start getting to, okay, now we do the data piece, right? And so that's how that process should work. obviously in more than 5 minutes of talking, but you go through the process and you start to get to real conversations with a company on, okay, here's the problem that we're going to solve for you. Here's how we're going to help you. And in return, here's what we want. And so now then you're putting a puzzle together. We have things, you have things, you want things, we want things. Do those pieces fit together? And can we make a deal?
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think you used the example of Tetris before, because not just is it a puzzle that only has one way of working, but you can manipulate the pieces and actually make them fit better at different times if you're willing to take on that onboarding piece, or you're willing to take on some other component that you didn't know. It's that flexibility that seems like makes it really good fit. The other thing that you hit on that just was so resonant with me is this idea of it all comes from really understanding your customer and the other things that they're doing. And, so often we see folks from a marketing and sales perspective get sort of caught in a trap where they have their perception of the customer, but they don't really know the customer. And so their false assumptions about what the customer wants or what else is important to them leads them to do sponsorships in a very simple, investment of time and money that's just not aligned with where their customer is. And that same thing obviously holds true from a partnership perspective. And it really underscores that need to understand the customer on a deep level.
That's right. And part of it is also your partner becomes your customer, and you have to know them just as in depth, right? You have to fully understand their product, their business model, right? What levers do they care about, right? In order to be the good partner to them, you have to know their business as well as they do. And so that's part of the learning and the reason it takes so much time to get these things off the ground, because you have to really, you do your homework up front, but you're going to learn a lot more through building that relationship with the partner.
That's right. So we've talked about the sort of the strategic why, and then even some of the technical how. I want to actually go a little bit deeper into a unique flavor, because I know you have some real expertise in helping companies develop specific types of partnerships related to data and sort of sharing the data between them. Talk to us a little bit about, the unlock that comes from that. And some of the sort of unique kind of data sets and partnerships that you've seen work, and how APIs can feed into each other to really enhance products.
It's super interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of companies will generate unique data sets.
Yeah.
Not all of those unique data sets will therefore be valuable.
Right.
Right. So I had one client that generated a very, very unique data set. The only value to that data set, though, we scoured the market, would have been to build a competitive product, which we obviously weren't going to do. And so there are cases where, you would like to get in the data game, but at the end of the day, what you're doing is so specialized and so unique, it's hard to do. There are some cases, though, where you are spinning out data. Customer data, purchase data that's unique in the marketplace, things that could be used for measurement, especially, if you think about it from an e-commerce standpoint in the ad tech space, right? Being able to attribute purchases, being able to do better targeting because you know more about your customers, right? Those sorts of data pieces are hugely valuable, and there's a monster industry built around those. So that's one thing to think about, is as you're building your product, as you're growing your customer base, what are the unique pieces of data that you're generating? And once you get those to a certain amount of scale, who's going to find them valuable? How would they want to use them? And then often there is an exchange to be made, whether you're selling it directly or you're exchanging it for access to data that will help your product. Right.
Sure.
Again, there are integration opportunities where you're just exchanging data because it makes both products better. Right. And there's no marketing, there's no sales. It's just a matter of, we want to better serve our customers, and we know this is a mechanism to do that.
Yeah. It reminds me of, sort of the old school, almost industrial concept of, there's the lumber mill, and then next to it is the paper factory.
Yeah. Right.
Because the paper factory uses the exhaust from the lumber mill they take the shavings, and then the heat that comes off of running those saws, they used to boil the water that they then, cook the shavings down in so that they can then cool it out and make paper. And oftentimes I've seen really interesting kind of data partnerships come from thinking about what's that data exhaust? What's the byproduct of doing what you do that might be valuable to someone else, or potentially does someone else create some data byproduct that might be valuable to you, but that is fundamentally like they would have to pay someone else to cart it off for them, like those shavings from the lumber mill until they, open the paper factory next door.
Yeah. And by the way, that same paradigm still exists. Like there are startups that are taking the gases that come out of like oil refineries and capturing that gas, running it through turbines, and then using that to power Bitcoin mining servers, right? I mean, like there's so much innovation, and everyone's exhaust is somebody else's
Quite literal exhaust. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
That's so interesting. Well, you're obviously an expert in a lot of really interesting things that can be big unlocks for companies, but I got to be mindful of your time. But before I let you go, what's something on the horizon for you, either in the business or personal, or just kind of in the space in general, that you think is interesting or that you're, kind of personally excited about?
I mean, the thing that excites me most, and the thing I probably love most about my job right now, is I get to talk to so many entrepreneurs, really smart, thoughtful people that are solving real problems for their customers. And there's no shortage of problems still to be solved, right? We're 20, 30 years into the tech boom. Things feel a bit mature, and there's still no shortage of things to solve and niches to chase. And so part of the thing that's been fun for me is I get to meet these entrepreneurs, hear their stories, learn about these unique niches, right? Whether it's how to help companies save on out of network healthcare costs, for example, right? That's an area that I've met startups that are solving, or, how to help neurodivergent kids learn to do chores and be better listeners at home through a gamified app, for example, right? Like there's so many of these types of solutions out there for all different types of fields. Ad tech solutions that bring the cost of buying ads on Facebook down 20 to 30% through really smart data solutions. Again, I could go on and on, but the point is, like, that's the stuff that I find most fascinating. And I'm excited about finding ways to then help them figure out how do they take that next step from a growth standpoint. What are the types of partnerships that are going to make the most sense, that can help them achieve that goal, so they can actually solve this problem for more people.
So you have a really unique, set of expertise, and I'm sure a Rolodex worth its weight in platinum or unobtainium, whatever the most valuable thing on earth is. But, for those listening that are like, yeah, this really sounds like something I need in my business to unlock. Like, who exactly do you work with? Who should reach out to you? What are the things that would make a good fit for you?
Yeah, the sweet spot for me are tech, media, and commerce companies. Usually 5 million plus in revenue is kind of the sweet spot. And the reason for that is you have to know your customer, right? You need some set of traction that gives you something to offer partners in return, right? So you can be smarter about who you go after, and you can actually have something to discuss with them that they'll find valuable. So that's sort of the point where partnerships start to make more sense. Now that's not tried and true. Like, it can make sense earlier, it can make sense later. But like, as you said in the intro, it's ad tech, it's fintech, it's health tech, it's energy. It's a pretty broad range of folks, because the framework I mentioned earlier works, and we can apply it consistently, and we can help build really great partnership programs.
Well, and at that scale of operations, a company's actually ready for that big unlock. Like they could actually handle doubling over the course of
a great point that we didn't even talk about, right? These partnerships can bring real scale, right? Be careful what you wish for. Like you got to be ready to handle an influx of opportunities and be ready to scale up. It's a good problem to have, but it is a problem that you have to be ready to solve operationally. And even just to get to that influx, right? You're going to have to put resources against doing the API integrations, doing the product work, building marketing materials, providing sales materials, whatever else you need to do to solve your partner's problem. Like, you're going to put resources against, and that's going to take away from other priorities. And so you have to be ready to make those types of investments along the way. It's not just in bringing in someone like me, but then understanding as this comes along, we're going to need resources to make these things really, really work.
That's right. So for our listeners that are at that place and are ready to bring someone like you on, how do they get in touch? What's the best way to connect with you?
I'm just at LinkedIn. That's the easiest place to find me. Mark Wasiljew, Wasiljew. The company's called Breakmark Consulting. You can find me there. Please reach out and I'd be happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you taking the time to connect today. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Really enjoyed it.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thank you for joining this episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. We hope you've gained insights to grow your business. If you enjoyed this discussion, please rate, comment, like on your favorite platform, and share to others who will find it useful. Do you know a CEO, founder, or leader at an early stage B2B services, tech, or SaaS company who would like to be a guest and share their story? Send us a note. Let's schedule a conversation.